So welcome, Rashad Johnson. Good to see you. Welcome to A Case for Cannabis. Here we go. Rashad, tell us a little bit about who you are. What do you do?
My name is Rashad Johnson, a Senior Government Affairs Manager for EAZE Technologies, which is a cannabis delivery platform. And what I do is I work on policy. I work on policy that benefits the industry, that supports small businesses, and I support equity initiatives to make sure that those who've been impacted by the war on drugs have a fair and equitable slice of the pie as states and the the federal government looks to legalize cannabis.
That's a very good position to be. In my talking with folks, this industry, policy and business are completely interwoven. If you don't understand policy, there's no way you're going to be successful in business. Just the way that this industry is evolving.
Absolutely.
Take us back before EAZE, before being a government affair manager, all this. How did you get interested in politics, and how did you get interested in cannabis?
Okay, awesome. So I think, it started, I guess, from a child. My dad worked as a government appointee for multiple governors in the state of California, and my mom was a journalist, right? So she was a PR expert. And so I was able to see my dad kind of navigate the political realms and also see my mom write stories and highlight things that were happening positive and or negative in our community for the newspaper that we, Sacramento Bee, where we live in Sacramento. And so I was able to honestly be able to see politics and comms all in one household and kind of see like how those two levers actually impact the legislators and the people who are making the rules and things like that. And so, I became fascinated with it. My mom's friends were lobbyists, right? So I was able to kind of see where money and policy meet, which I think a lot of people don't understand and don't, which kind of confuses them in the political process.
People don't understand it, and because they don't understand it, they're a little fearful of it.
Right.
When people hear the word lobbyist, oh my goodness, that's corruption. That's corruption in the system.
Right.
But you're saying that you grew up in a household that you understood how money and politics work together with journalism, with the Fourth Estate, right? And with public opinion.
Right.
So growing up in that household, having those exposures as a young man, how did you start with your professional life?
I think it starts, to whom much is given, much is required. And I was able to have the luxury of parents who worked really hard and provided me a good life, right? And so with that, they raised me like, listen, most people don't have nearly as many opportunities as you have. And because of that, you have to always think of those folks when you're doing any work. It can't just be to serve you and yourself. Like, one is work for your last name, not your first, but then also work for the community that you want people to see and people to support in the community that you're ultimately a part of. And so with that, I always worked on, initiatives that would help, I think, level the playing field for us. So it was either, education. I was always a tutor in high school, always making sure that I connected with the younger generation and tried to build people up, because I came from a household that always built me up. And so with that, I mentored for a guy named Kevin Johnson, an NBA All-Star.
Heard of him.
Heard of him. NBA All-Star, mayor of Sacramento, all around just a community champion, if nothing else. Not maybe not an NBA champion, but a champion in everything else, right?
Well, the Phoenix Suns, Barkley, he was great, but
You had Jordan. You're fighting Jordan, right? He gave Jordan 40 points in the playoffs, so he can at least say he was competing with the best.
That's true.
And so with that, his thing was always trying to build resource centers and opportunities for the kids in his neighborhood to succeed academically. Like, he was able to see when he got to Cal how far behind he was, and the fact that because he was an athlete, he was able to shepherd through without necessarily being exposed. But because of that, he was like, these kids need to have these opportunities. So he started with this thing called St. Hope Academy, and I tutored there through high school. And then, after college, I was working in professional sports. So I was working for the Oakland Raiders, and I was doing PR for them, right? Which is all spin and community engagement, community involvement. And my biggest thing was to connect the players with interview, media, TV, radio, right? And my thing with them was like, look, they don't know who you are. They think you're just some jock, right? Like,
Yes.
Introduce yourself to them. Let them know that you think about more things than this. Let them know that you're a resource for them to be closer to the football experience, because a lot of folks are closed off and you're rich, people don't trust, you know what I mean? It's like all those things. And so that kind of gave me another study and kind of just like science of people, right? Because I was just having to navigate these huge humans with all who've been heralded and told what, and tell people what to do their whole life. And I'm asking them and enlightening them and educating them on opportunities that are better than them. And so with that, I got my kind of football feel. The Raiders were leaving. Al Davis died. I was hurt. I was like, it's a different organization now.
Yes.
And I called Kevin and I was like, what are you doing for the community right now? And he was like, well, look, I just married this lady, Michelle Rhee, who, DC chancellor of schools at one point. And he was like, listen, man, we're trying to reform this education stuff. And prior to that, he had taken over his alma mater high school, Kevin did, and made it a charter school in Sacramento. And they were putting out, 98% of the graduates. It used to be like 30% were A through G qualified. Now 98% were getting accepted into four-year universities. Right. So he completely changed that. And so when he was like, look, we're trying to do this on a grand scale. We're going to start going into these communities and seeing these failing school pipelines. And we're going to go to our community and we're going to tell them, this is how we can take over our education system. This is how we can serve our community. A lot of you people in power who are African-American in these cities went to these schools. And then your kids go to private schools now. And this school is just now failing in generation after generation.
So reinvesting back into public education, but with no excuses.
With
high standards, accountability. I was a part of that whole education movement in New York City, started a small high school in the South Bronx.
Like Steve Perry and all those folks.
I was a part of it. I will say, ultimately, education without access to the workforce is not enough. Education without access to affordable college, higher education, not enough. So I imagine at some point you hit some barriers, you hit some walls, and you decided to level up.
Absolutely.
How did you level up and get involved in statewide politics?
Yeah, awesome. So I think something that people got to understand in politics and then just government is advocacy groups, right? So we're fighting against CTA all the time, right? The biggest teacher union in the country, right? So you start realizing that okay, you can have pie in the sky ideas, you can actually be right in spirit, but if you can't get the advocacy groups that represent thousands of people whose life you're trying to change, then you're not going to get anything done, right? And so, Kevin was coming down to the end of his time as mayor. Some of the momentum for the education reform opportunities that we were running were kind of slowing down. And so I was like, well, listen, I was able to travel with Kevin around the country to go to these U.S. Conference of Mayors, and I was able to see all these kind of new innovative businesses that were coming along, right? And I was like, this new transportation technology, Uber and Lyft, this is a whole, this feeds my millennial spirit, right?
Cities are where the innovation comes from.
This is where all these companies go and pitch, right? They basically go pitch. This is the new thing we're about to bring into your neighborhood. What do you think, right? And so I was like, okay, well, it's time for me to get to the state legislature. I'd done local politics with Kevin, who was the mayor at that time, and worked with local leaders around the country. And I was like, okay, it's time to get to the state and start helping craft some of this policy, and then also use the skills I learned from the local level to equip folks when they start coming lobbying for the things they cared about in the Capitol. So I just see people coming from inner city LA who want something that makes sense. And I'm like, well, you got to kind of do it like this down at home first. And so
don't just go up to Sacramento and think, you need to get at the local level endorsements at the city council, your local state assembly person, and then come knocking on doors.
Come knocking on the, because now we know that you've got backing. You've done the due diligence to know that whatever you're pitching, you've developed it enough, and you're not wasting your time or anyone else's, right? And so I said, okay, well, let's be working in the legislature. And so, my mom had worked in the legislature too as a comms director for 2 LA senators. And so I figured I'd seen how interesting it was and how close to the pulse of society you ultimately were. And to be honest, I just went and cold called every member's office. I maybe didn't have to do that. I could have probably used my mom's name or some clout or something, but I was just like.
It's actually that simple. If you really want to meet someone, go
pull up
and
on them.
Meet them.
It's really simple.
And introduce yourself.
And
build your network.
And humble yourself, right? It's don't ever think you're so important that you don't have to go and find someone that can do something for you more than you can do for them initially. You just got to be honest with yourself. And I felt that I had, like I said, I grew up with access and resources. I had opportunities to skip lines and get, preferential treatment and get opportunities that others may not have gotten, right? And so for me, it was just like a deconstructing of all the access and privilege that I had. Like, let me just go ahead and just do the nuts and bolts, bootstrap, knocking. Like, obviously I had references and folks that could vouch for me, but I wanted to myself go and drop a physical resume off.
Yes.
So I did all those offices. I got a call back. Senator Bradford, who I knew, who had who represented a Senate district that my mom used to work for when she worked for the previous senator before him. Yes. And we met, and there it was. It was like, I also say this, and I had the luxury in my life, and you rarely hear this because you rarely find African-American males who had black male teachers, but I had black male bosses in all of my professional career. Wow. From the Raiders to Kevin to Senator Bradford. Like, these have always been the dudes who helped me keep my authenticity as a black man while also being able to efficiently navigate the corporate structure. Wow. And mitigate against the things that folks will use to denote your abilities, right? The minor cosmetic things or the fickle,
the microaggressions.
The microaggressions, right? The institutionalized, subversive, de facto response when someone who doesn't look like you does something as good as you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And with that, he just empowered me. He was like, listen, young guy, like, you probably think you're this, you probably think you're not. I'm gonna treat you like that, and you're gonna put up some shots and score, or you're not a baller, right? Like, you can say you play hoop, let's see it, right? Yeah. And he just kind of was like, show me. I don't need to tell you. If I gotta remind you, then you're not doing enough. You're not thinking out of the box, kind of. And
So you're in, what year is this?
This is 2016 when I start working in the legislature.
All right, because you're a young man. You're a young
34, I mean, relatively.
I'm in my 40s. You're a young man.
You couldn't tell.
All right, you're looking good. So you're in, I like how we frame this because I have a sense of your trajectory and your history. Right. When you are working for a state senator and the way politics works, as someone on staff, you can often get given tremendous responsibilities. And around 2017, 2018, you were given the responsibility to write legislation around equity, cannabis equity. What was that legislation that you passed, and how did you come up with this policy? I was sitting in my back dungeon office in the Capitol, and a head staffer for the president of the Senate came in and said, hey, Senator Bradford said that he wants to write a cannabis equity bill. And he said, you're the guy that's supposed to do it. There you go. There we have it. And I was so invigorated. I remember printing out all of the current laws for the California cannabis and every like legalization language for every city in the state. Yes. And I just started reading it and saying, okay, how can I loop in all these cities that have already gotten the ball rolling in social equity? And just so that, right, because I'm trying to, this series is really for folks who don't know anything about cannabis. And the way legislation works is it happens at the localities first, and now this was an effort to do something statewide to balance out all of these different local measures, much like right now with all these different state initiatives legalizing cannabis, we're having an opportunity to create federal legislation. Right, an umbrella kind of set of standards that folks can either build off of or rely on if they don't. And the previous standards in 2016, that prop basically legalized recreational cannabis, but it continued to stigmatize folks who had been in the traditional legacy cannabis underground economy, basically excluded them from participation. Correct. So your job was to figure out how can folks most impacted, disproportionately impacted, war on drugs, have access to this industry that they helped to build? Correct. All right. Exactly that. And there's there's Oakland is like the hub of kind of that strong advocacy for those social equity programs, right? Yes. I think what people don't understand is the reason that cannabis could be legalized recreationally in the state was that the negotiation between the state and the cities were able to maintain local control.
meaning they could direct or dictate the cannabis rules, what was allowed, the type of licenses, the type of enforcement.
And a lot of cities say,
no,
we don't want any.
85% or 75%, they
keep
still
cannabis out of my community.
To this day, right?
Yes.
And so obviously that hamstrings the industry as a whole, right? Because you have cities that won't allow you to operate, right? So then you have access gaps, right? So you have people who need cannabis for whatever medicinal need they have, and the city doesn't allow them to have legal cannabis options. So what do? They go to the legal market, right? The illegal market. The folks that we want to go through the equity programs and be legal. But they're like, I can't make any money, right? One, because this city doesn't want me to operate, and two, the taxes are so strong that it, kind of.
So it's clear that what you did in 2018 was you tried to put a prop to keep the door open so that there is equity and access. But we know, because it's now 2021, and what I'm hearing is a lot of folks that applied for equity license are still in the waiting line.
Absolutely.
They're putting their money down. They've leased spaces. They've paid all this, and they still don't have the license. They can't operate. Because we have this patchwork legislative system, I was speaking with someone from Cannacraft, they're saying that sometimes their shipments get picked up by the DEA and their cannabis gets confiscated. And because it's federally illegal. So it's like there's so many barriers, there's so many challenges in this, yet you are working on policy, you left the state and now you're working for EAZE. You're working for, I guess, one of the best known delivery services here in the Bay Area. And I imagine you're beyond California.
Well, yeah, we're actually, we're currently looking to operate in Michigan and New Jersey and New York.
Yeah.
That's kind of like our most recent and probable targets moving forward.
So you're gonna grow.
Yes.
But it has been a very topsy-turvy kind of journey.
Yes.
Where do you see cannabis going? You have this insider lens into policy and creation. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're following the MORES Act. I'm sure you're doing all this. Where is cannabis policy and legislation going in 2021?
I mean, hopefully up, right, and not stagnant. It's just been stagnant for a very long time. I mean, I think the Senate race in Georgia drastically impacts the outcome of how fast legalization at the federal level will come. Yeah. I think in California, more and more, I think the regulators are understanding that you have to let an industry grow before you start putting too many restrictions and taxes and allocations. Like, you're stunting its growth, right? And in effect, allowing the illegal operations to win, right? Which hurts the industry as well, right? And so I think California is becoming much more responsive and becoming much more intentional in trying to support the industry. Yes. I think California is going in that way. And I think at the federal level, I think, we got Kamala, who's, kind of quiet on cannabis for a while, but she reversed course.
Not so quiet.
Not anymore, right. She
won the election, and she's like, hey, we're going to legalize this.
People change, right? And I think it even goes, I'll say this, and this is another thing. Because cannabis has been so negatively connected to Black folks, her as a politician and as someone trying to climb the upper roles, to talk about cannabis freely and comfortably like that prior to where she's at now would have probably been something that people would have used to denote or disqualify her. Oh, yeah. That would have just fed right into stereotypes. Of course, the Black person's going to change weed legalization, right? Yeah. Like, that would have probably been part of it. Yeah. And so I think even those type of perceptions and scenarios are prime example as to like why it's so important for white cannabis owners and Black cannabis owners to work together to help destigmatize and reestablish a level of trust. And like, you can use cannabis to drive communities back together, I think. Like, although we're all stratified and everyone has their issues, cannabis is that one unifier that I think if you realize that there's enough sun for everyone to make money and you just really drive the connection of symbiotic business relationship. I mean, I would love to see that vision. Right. Everyone can make money. Folks can work together across the racial spectrum. Right. I would love all these things to happen. Right. What I hear from operators in the space, this is a tough industry. You need capital. You are fighting against the big dogs. We got there's a lot of corporations coming in.
getting investment. You can't bank with cannabis. You can't have your own business bank account. Nope. You can't get funding. So a lot of folks are reliant on investors, and investors who are going to come in, if you don't have your own equity, they're going to extract it, right? Correct. And there is a lot that has been built up in this industry over time. We spoke a little bit before this about intellectual property of the genetics of the seeds. and California has a great competitive advantage against the rest of the country because the culture is so strong. Right. How do you foresee California retaining its edge on the culture and on the IP that we have here? Because you're about to go to Massachusetts, New Jersey. People don't know you there. No. They don't know you on the East Coast.
They don't, and they treat you like that, right? You go in there, you're like, yo, I've taken these lumps, I've taken these, bruises and bumps in the most mature industry in the country, and they still don't want to hear it. Like, we're not California, so. And it's just like, well, no, what I'm telling you is like, the best way to use wisdom is to learn from others' mistakes, right? And we're trying to I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm trying to simply let you know that these are the conversations that undoubtedly will happen here.
What I've also heard is that equity frameworks across the country are very weak, right? Across the nation, 3% of cannabis owners are black or brown owners, right? Yeah. And the equity, license, tiny percentage.
Yes.
We don't have a national framework for equity.
No.
Is that something that EAZE or other companies are trying to promote and move forward?
Yes, that's why I love working for EAZE, to be honest. Like, they know that we're standing on the shoulders of people who've been negatively impacted, who've been hurt the most, right? And so for them, it's like, listen, we've got to use our resources and our acumen to not only help lift folks up who want to be involved with us, but to lift the whole industry as a whole up, right? There's a conversation in New York right now, right, where they're capping the amount of licenses social equity applicants can get. And we're like, that's not equity, that's equality. If they're getting if they're allowed to get the same amount of licenses as a rich person who can capitalize all that stuff, how are you making it fair for them? How are we going to let them compete? How are you going to allow them to get a leg up? Because they definitely had a leg down when they were being arrested, right?
Wait, so are you saying that there is no cap if you can afford all the prerequisites? Anyone can get a license?
In New York right now, the current language says, if you're one of the 10 medicinal licenses they had in 2019 that they allowed, you don't have a cap on licenses or verticalization once they get to adult use.
So, first mover advantage, if someone got in on the medicinal side 20 years ago, or 10 years, they're basically
do whatever they want, get as many as they want, verticalize, and everybody else outside of that group of 10 can only get 3, and they can't verticalize, right? So it's got to be 3 of the same business, and they can't verticalize. And what my thought is like, well, listen, what America struggles in identifying is the difference between equity and equality, right?
Yes.
Right? Like,
what's the difference?
I mean, the difference to me is like, I equitably can, go apply to a school because I'm human, right?
Yes.
But because I'm African American and I probably had horrible books and a horrible transportation, I probably deserve a little bit more grace room.
We're not starting off from the same
We're
place.
not starting from the same
So to give everyone a 100-yard voucher, if you're starting on the 1-yard line and I'm starting back in the locker room, we're not all going to cross the finish line.
I need to be at the 30-yard line and you at the 10 because you're going to probably catch up with me anyway. I'm learning on the curve. I'm already coming from behind.
So if we're serious about equity, we need to grease the wheels. We need to be honest. We need to create opportunity.
We need to be honest with ourselves.
Now, part of what we're doing in the series is exploring how can the community colleges get involved? How can colleges, higher education support? There has to be great workforce opportunities in this industry. What role should the community colleges play?
The community colleges, I think, can be intrinsically involved in the growth and proliferation of cannabis use for health and wellness purposes, as well as industry growth and business. I think a lot of times there's a stigma in community colleges that, a lot of kids go to JC because they were, stoners in high school or just weren't focused, right? But I feel like community colleges are when young adults learn who they are, learn what they want, learn how they can be successful on earth, right? And it also gives them the opportunity to strip themselves of the domestication of their parents who say, you gotta do this, and you gotta do this, and you gotta do that.
Well, no, at the community colleges, the main population is not 19-year-olds.
Right.
It's 20-year-olds, it's 30-year-olds.
People who find it right.
People who have been out there and said, hey, I need to go back to school. I need to get a certification. I'm ready to get serious.
I was chasing a dream or chasing something that actually doesn't suit me, doesn't make me happy. It was a job, it wasn't a career, right? And I think the community colleges, it's such a comfortable learning experience. There's pressure, obviously, but it's not so pressure and competitive that you are worried about your level of success when you leave that place. I feel like the community college has always just been a successful stepping stone for anyone that I've ever talked to.
And what I've heard is that currently in the cannabis space, there is no formal education, right? It is, you have to be self-taught.
Yep.
You have traditional knowledge because people have been working in the industry for decades or generations.
Right.
But now all of a sudden, as it gets legalized, how are you going to translate your resume, which is not a traditional resume, to this industry? Are you seeing, EAZE and other companies think about this?
Absolutely.
How to help folks enter in who don't have the traditional credentials?
Absolutely. I think, one, working in the tech world where, some of those kind of identifiers or validators aren't necessary because it's really a talent-based industry, right? You don't need to have a PhD in coding if you can code with your eyes closed.
Code this, solve this problem.
Can you code it?
Yep.
You could have went to 7-Eleven University, right? It doesn't matter. I think that the common, I hate it, but it's such a natural retort. It's like, there's just not enough minority talent. We can't find it, right? Like, can't find the talent. And EAZE, and I know a lot of companies we're not going to rely on that excuse. You can find the talent. Just because they don't speak exactly the way they need to speak in this corporate room does not mean that they can't valuably impact the company, right? And so what a lot of people don't understand is cannabis culture is connected to people of color way more than a lot of other folks. So you know the business scale, you know the prices of things, you know the names of things.
You know quality.
You know quality, you know all of those things. You know how to, present products to your community and the folks that you're around and what looks corny, what looks cool, what looks genuine, what looks forced.
Yes.
And like that type of those type of context clues and perspective are essential to a cannabis company that wants to be truly connected with folks.
And what's funny is because I've been watching this, there are folks who have no relationship to cannabis. Politicians who have been anti-drugs, anti-cannabis, who are all of a sudden the poster children for tobacco companies to enter into cannabis.
Boehner.
I wasn't going to say it.
We got to, because I think that's part of the destigmatization too, is like calling people out you were calling people out because you were worried about them getting high. Let's call people out for talking about weed, about people getting high, and now wanting to make all the money off of people getting high.
Yes.
Now that's
a problem. That is a problem.
That is it.
Because the ultimate question is who is going to make the money from this industry? It is a commodity, like tobacco, like cotton, like sugar.
Right.
And Black people have not gotten their equity from building those industries.
And if they do, it's like sharecropping. It's just like right after Reconstruction slavery, honestly.
Man.
Because they get these social equity licenses, right? You don't have the capital, so you partner with a big company. They cash call you 6 to 9 months in because you don't have the capital to, further along the grow out.
The Momentum program that EAZE is doing, right? I mentioned I met with David Ume earlier, High Speed, and he's an applicant, he's a finalist. How are you looking to support folks, entrepreneurs like him, whoever's in this program? What's it about?
So Momentum is, not an incubator, it's an accelerator, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, it's about vetting folks who you can tell really care, have a passion for the industry, deserve to be in the industry, and need that extra push to get them to sustainability and viability long term. Yeah. So what Momentum provides is $50,000 of free money, right? People say
no
nothing's
strings?
free, not a string attached except the thread from the ink, right? Just nothing.
Love it.
Free, $50,000, and you get access in carte blanche to all of our corporate resources internally. So whether it's branding, IP licensing, whether it's accounting, financing, we will connect you with folks in those departments, and they will help you, iron out whatever you need ironed out for your business.
Man.
Once that 12-week program is over, every week they have a meeting with someone who's an expert in whatever topic that week is for the cohort.
Yes.
And then at the end of the program, they then have a pitch day where they get to sit. We provide them with opportunities to pitch their product to VCs and larger funds that may want to invest in cannabis companies. And then they're off to the races.
And one thing that I'm also learning is this industry is all about trust. Every business, every industry is about relationships.
Right.
It's about networks, it's about relationships, it's about trust. But cannabis is truly about trust.
Period.
Because so much of the work is done based on your reputation. If I'm buying from Rashad, he better not stiff me, because if he stiffs me, his word is he's
That
done.
is how the cannabis game is.
He's done.
Hey, get caught one time, right?
Yeah.
And that's who you are.
Yeah.
It's a very gossipy industry because, again, it was behind the cloak for a very long time.
Yeah.
So if it's not off word, it's not real, to be honest, because everything nothing was on paper. Like, this is cannabis. This is nothing. The least, the amount, no trails.
The less paper, the better.
The less paper, the better, except cash, right?
Yes.
And so, again, like you said, trust. And that's kind of how I try to operate in all the space, whether I'm talking to a politician or a small business delivery owner in central LA. It's like, look, bro, I love cannabis. I love fairness. And I would love to help connect you to the opportunity where not only do you benefit the people that you represent, but you benefit yourself personally in doing what I think is the right thing to do.
Yes.
And I mean, that's kind of like how I pitch. It's like, because it's just not a business, this is not just a job to me, it's a passion. Yeah. I want people to be able to read my eyes and look in my face and know that, like, I'm truly doing this because I care, not because I have to, and not because I want to take advantage of you.
And you're employed by the industry, but you have aspirations to be an owner in the industry.
Absolutely.
You want to be a part of this industry for the long haul.
Absolutely.
Last thing here, do you think that there's a window to get into cannabis? This is one of the things that I'm trying to understand. Some people are saying it's already too late.
Yeah.
If you didn't get in with medicinal cannabis, it's too late.
Right.
Some people are saying, 2018, that was the time.
Right.
Now people are saying, you got to get in before, federally. Is there a window, or do you think that every moment presents its own unique opportunity?
That's how I feel. I feel like every time presents its own opportunity. In cannabis, you can never listen to the first no.
Yes.
In anything.
In
life, but specifically in cannabis, everyone's going to tell you can't do it until you do it, sadly. One, it's like the natural kind of hate of people seeing folks believe in the mission and driving to it with reckless abandon, not caring what anybody thinks. Yeah. And then the other is like, why don't I have like that motivate? Like, why do they feel like they can do it and I don't feel like I can do it? And it's like, because it's such a stratified community in itself.
But you said something about the importance of cash. Resources make a difference. So
everything.
Yes, drive everything. I'm not going to accept no.
Right.
But if you have resources, so part of this idea of a $50,000 investment,
right.
all of these, resources that are brought to the table,
right.
That's part of leveling the playing field.
Access to capital, like even in the bill I wrote, access to capital was critical. If you don't have cash, you can't do anything. It's all an idea. It's all a dream.
Does the state of California provide an investment fund?
Yes, they have access.
For equity cannabis entrepreneurs?
The first bill gave $10 million. The second bill gave $30. The money was dispensed 2 months ago. So I think it was like $2 million to LA, $2 million to San Francisco, $1.9 million to Oakland, $700,000 to Humboldt.
So that's still not enough, but
it gives you technical assistance. So like if you're going through a city and applying, if you need a lawyer for your business plan or to get some papers or your lease notarized for your preliminary license process, that's what that money is for. So that money goes to you when you need to have someone come and check your lighting to make sure you're compliant, right?
Yes.
For technical assistance, like that's extremely important. And you have to pay for technical assistance in the industry. People in cannabis will charge you for anything. They say, oh, I know somebody, charge you $20,000 and you'll come up with zero, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that's the biggest part.
It's expensive. It's expensive to be in this industry.
I would say to get a non-storefront dispensary off the ground with, say, minimal TI, like tenant improvement, minimal kind of work on the property, $1 to $3 million.
All right. So that's a barrier, but if you can work at it, if you have the resources, incredible opportunity to build generational wealth and to create jobs for the localities that embrace this industry, which is everywhere.
Right.
They're actually going to create tax revenue and jobs for their people.
Jobs they want to do, jobs that like people can be proud and kind of like quirky to say that they do. Like most people who work in cannabis like to say it. It's proud because we're not only destigmatizing cannabis, but we're destigmatizing what corporate looks like, what high efficiency looks like, what a hard worker looks like.
That sounds like what tech did back in the 70s, and it took the Bay Area in this whole direction. Cannabis is like the antithesis to tech.
Yeah, it's disruptive, right? And that goes back to.
But I would love to see these two cultures play out in the Bay Area.
So I'll be funny. So one of our biggest board members at EAZE, one of the guys that we all love and used to great, is a guy named Jim Clark who started Netscape, which was the first IPO, public sold like kind of internet company, right?
Yeah.
He's one of our biggest guys and like he loves our company because he sees past the holdups now. He knows that this is going to be something next level and innovative and disruptive. But disruptive in a positive route, kind of like education reform. Disruptive where we're giving you better options for health, wellness, business opportunity, stress management, like all the things, like kind of really unleashing the plant again and showing folks that like whoever was telling us that this didn't benefit us or was a negative thing is lying to us, right? And so that's kind of,
Hey, this has been beautiful speaking with you. I've learned a lot, and I think we're going to have to continue this conversation because 2021 is going to produce a lot of change in the space.
Look forward to it.
But thank you so much, Rashad.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time.
All right.